The spice that lied to Europeans for 500 years. It's the year 1580. A Portuguese spice trader stands in the crowded markets of Goa, holding up a strange golden root. The air smells of pepper, cinnamon, and the sea. He dips his pen into ink and writes a letter back home. "We have found Indian saffron." He folds the letter, seals it with wax, and he couldn't have been more wrong. What he had discovered wasn't saffron at all. It was turmeric, a humble root that had already been quietly shaping civilizations for thousands of years. History. Here's the funny part. Turmeric never needed Europe's approval. Long before Portuguese ships touched India's shores, before empires rose and disappeared, before the Silk Road connected continents, turmeric was already growing beneath Indian soil. Archaeologists believe it was being cultivated in the Indus Valley around 2500 BCE, roughly 4,000 years ago. The Portuguese were right about one thing: it was incredibly valuable, but they misunderstood what made it special. Real saffron comes from a delicate purple crocus flower. Every tiny thread is picked by hand, just 3 stigmas from each flower, which is why saffron became one of the most expensive spices on earth. Turmeric was different. It grew underground. It was harvested by the sackful. It was affordable, abundant, and brilliantly golden, so merchants gave it a more glamorous name: Indian saffron, because sometimes a beautiful lie sells faster than a simple truth. Culture and faith. Now travel from a 16th century marketplace to a modern Indian wedding. The bride is smiling, the groom is trying not to laugh. Grandmothers are chasing cousins around the courtyard with bowls of bright yellow paste, while everyone ends up with turmeric stains on their clothes. This is the haldi ceremony, and it isn't just a colorful tradition. For thousands of years, turmeric has symbolized purity, prosperity, protection, and new beginnings. In ancient Vedic rituals, it prepared the body and spirit before sacred ceremonies. Even today, a tiny turmeric mark on the forehead is believed to carry blessings, and the spice is offered in temples during worship. Think about that for a moment. How many plants earn a place on both the dinner table and the altar? Turmeric has held both seats for millennia. Traditional wisdom. If you grew up in Asia, you've probably heard the same advice. Got a cut? Put turmeric on it. Sore throat? Drink turmeric milk. Recovering after childbirth? Eat food cooked with turmeric every day. Nobody pulled out research papers. Nobody quoted clinical trials. It was simply the wisdom of mothers and grandmothers, passed from one generation to the next. A quiet tradition that survived because people believed it worked. Modern science. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Those grandmothers were almost right. Almost. Scientists eventually discovered that turmeric's star compound, called curcumin, has one major problem. Your body is terrible at absorbing it. Eat turmeric by itself, and most of the curcumin never even reaches your bloodstream. It simply passes through. For centuries, nobody understood why turmeric sometimes seemed incredibly effective and other times did almost nothing. Then, in 1998, researchers in Bangalore found the missing piece, and it wasn't hidden in a laboratory. It was sitting in kitchens all over India: black pepper. The compound that gives black pepper its sharp bite, called piperine, can increase curcumin's bioavailability by up to 2,000% by slowing the body's breakdown of curcumin. Suddenly, something extraordinary became obvious. The traditional mixture of turmeric, black pepper, and ghee simmering in Indian kitchens for centuries wasn't just an old family recipe. Without knowing the chemistry, people had stumbled on an almost perfect combination, not through modern science, but through generations of observation and experience. Of course, science also reminds us to stay humble. Not every study finds dramatic benefits. At least one controlled trial found no significant reduction in inflammation among obese women after 4 weeks of turmeric supplementation. So turmeric isn't a miracle cure. It's a remarkable plant that still has more to teach us. So let's return to that Portuguese trader in Goa. He looked at a golden root and confidently called it Indian Saffron. He got the name wrong, but perhaps he sensed something important, that this ordinary-looking root was anything but ordinary. 400 years later, laboratories, researchers, and clinical studies are still trying to understand what generations of families had already woven into their daily lives. Sometimes history hides its greatest treasures in plain sight, and sometimes they're waiting quietly in the spice jar next to the stove. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden stories behind everyday herbs and spices, subscribe and join us for the next chapter of history you can actually taste. Subscribe.